Welcome back, Kings fans. I'm Jesse Cohen. I'm coming to you from my apartment. I've just gotten back from Toyota Sports Performance Center where I attended practice this morning with the LA Kings. The first thing that I can tell you is that the five-man power play unit will continue, five forward power play unit will continue to have five forwards on it. That much was clear from practice. Jim Hiller was asked about it afterwards, and it sounds like there will be changes attempted to how the unit moves on the ice, but that the deployment, the actual personnel used on that forward power play will not change. After practice, we were also allowed to speak to Kevin Fiala and Andrei Kuzmenko. There was a little bit of talk about it. They just echoed what Jim Hiller said. I asked Kevin Fiala whether or not when a coach or general manager speaks to the media, how much of that finds its way back into the locker room, because I thought Jim Hiller's comments after the Boston Bruins game on Friday night were particularly stark and clear about the power play and what the team feels about it. And Kevin Fiala said it is not his preference to pay attention to that sort of thing, but that he's sure that some guys do pay attention. And he said it isn't widely discussed in the locker room. It's not a huge deal. And I'm not terribly surprised by that, but I just thought perhaps when the coach is as frank as Jim Hiller was after the Boston Bruins game, that perhaps that might be a topic of conversation. But given that the five forward power play unit is not likely to change from the looks of it, then I wouldn't be surprised that it's not a huge topic of conversation. Having said that, I'm going to go ahead and play the video that I captured of Jim Hiller at practice. The audio might be tough in some spots because we were right next to the door that opens from the players area to the rink area. Apologies, I didn't clean it up, and I wasn't sure I was going to do this today, so I didn't bring any extra equipment. But here is Jim Hiller speaking to the media immediately after practice. You won't hear the first question because I wasn't recording it yet. I clipped off the tail end of the question because I didn't get the full question in. But the question was about Sammy Helenius being in the lineup. It appears that he will be in the lineup for the next game and that Alex Turcotte will not, based on the lines. We'll get to that as soon as we play this. But that is the first answer you'll hear is Jim Hiller talking about Samuel Helenius.
Well, Sammy and Pears both are probably Sammy a little more on the forecheck, but Pears is always kind of into the extracurriculars, if that's what you want to call it, whether it's between the whistles or after, And I think Sammy likes that type of game too. So, and then we got folks there with a little bit of speed for them. So, it should be a forechecking line. It should be a little bit of a smash mouth kind of hockey there.
Looking at the power play practice, looked like the same pieces, but a little bit of a different configuration. I think you can just share on the approach you might like to change in that.
Well, we like to put the puck in the back of the net. That's the biggest approach, change on the approach, yeah. So that's what I would say about that.
A couple seasons ago, I think it was your first year as an assistant, the power play had so much movement. I feel like the pieces were very hard to defend because everyone was moving around. Is that something you could maybe look to get a little bit more of in that area to increase the deception?
Yeah, I would say so. We could use a little more movement for sure. That bottom line is get the puck to the front of the net, and the pairs in the front of the net, so you can get that there in different ways. You don't want to just have one guy there. You'd like to have two, and then in a perfect world, you got someone coming down the backside, so you've got three. All that being said, easier said than done, and the puck has to be delivered at the right time and to the right spot too. So there are a lot of things that go into it. We're confident those guys can get it done.
You guys just faced Ottawa, obviously. I think you even alluded to it. It's almost like a mirror image type of couple. So what do you see? I don't know, either same or differently. That's in terms of generating offense, because they're sort of similar like to where they check, and they'll make it tough.
Yeah, and they're winning right now too. So. It was a hard game. The game that we had against them, I think they would say the same thing from their perspective. It was tight checking, but you know what I think, Eric? I think we're seeing that all over the league right now. We talk about the parity in the league, and I think, from my perspective, the most important part of that parity is everybody seems to be checking, and it's hard to score. And when you check and you make it hard to score, then the game's going to be close. And so that's why I think if the games are close, the standings are going to be close. And so I think there's pretty much a league-wide commitment to that right now.
The other day before the Boston game, you had mentioned that with Marco leading that group, they do kind of play similar to you guys. When it comes to establishing the identity and playing closer and closer to the identity, do you find it that when you play a team that plays similar to you, it's easier to play to the way that you want to, or is it more difficult when they play a similar way?
I don't know. I mean, I would like to say it's more difficult because that's how we want to play. You know what I mean? So I think what's happened on a couple of occasions, the Ottawa game in particular, and I would say against Boston too, it's been hard to get anything. It's been frustrating, I think, for our forwards in particular. And I think if you flip that on its head, you know, I'd like to think that's how other teams' forwards playing us. So we got a real taste of it. It doesn't feel good, you know. So would you say is it good or bad? I'm not sure. You just got to find a way through it. And again, that's I'm sure what other coaches say when they play us too.
As a coach, how do you balance the intervention with maybe a more veteran player, someone like Phil Deneau, who's having trouble finding the score sheet? How do you balance the maybe encouragement and also letting them do what they do best?
Right. Well, I mean, it's a hard one, right? Because everybody wants positive feedback. Everybody wants to feel like they're a positive contributor. And that doesn't matter who it is, if a guy's in a scoring slump or not. Sometimes there's a player that's a penalty killer. He just wants to go out there and do a good job on the penalty kill to feel good about it. And the puck's going in on you. So that's hard. I think the one thing is, you know, I would suggest every player in the league at different times has gone through a slump. Some of the top scorers consistently, there's always a time that you go through a slump and you question yourself. And, you know, everybody seems to be able at some point, some faster than others, pull themselves up. So I think as a coach, you don't want to make it worse. But, you know, at the same time, you got to coach the team.
Not to say this will necessarily happen. I'm sure you hope it does, but does it feel like this group just needs one of those outburst games to just kind of...
Eric, we've been saying it for 2 weeks. You know what? Tonight's the night. I think tonight will be the night where we just, the dam breaks and, you know, I mentioned before, we've had nights we've thrown 80, 90 attempts. I don't know, last night Boston game it wasn't quite that high, but there's still a lot of attempts by the end of the night. And you think at some point, you know, those nights, they're going to go in 4, 5, 6. So we're still waiting on that, and we're confident it's going to happen, but it feels like it should have happened already.
When it eases, but to ease the pressure of guys that, you know, might be maybe gripping their sticks a little bit.
Sure, that's just it. I mean, we can all talk about it intellectually, but there's a physical component of just feeling good and feeling loose and being free, and then there's no question you get a little tightened up at times.
Can your defense help you generate more offense?
Well, I would like to think so, yeah. I think their job primarily is, I would say, in the own zone, when the puck has hit their tape at the offensive blue line, is to find a way just to get it in and around that net front area, just to give the forwards a chance. You can say, hey, it would be perfect if they shot for a tip and it was great, or they made the goalie have a rebound and the puck laid there, but generally you just want them to get it past the first shot blocker, just get it into the area and let us get a chance. And so that's their job.
That was head coach. There. Why is my face all weird here? That was head coach Jim Hiller talking to the media following the practice there at Toyota Sports Performance Center. And I'm sorry, all of a sudden the screen is wrong and I don't like it. It's freaking me out. But anyway, Jim Miller spoke to the media. That was him talking about it. You heard asking questions about whether or not the defense can contribute to the offense, about the five forward power play. There was references to some players who are maybe struggling offensively to start the season. And, you know, Jim Miller talked about his approach to dealing with all of that. And we did see some changes to the lineup. I'll put that up here right now. This is based on this morning's practice. The top 6 looked the same. The top 2 lines, it was Kempe, or I guess I should have put Kempe on the other side there, but Fiala, Byfield, and Kempe. More Kopitar and Kuzmenko will be the top 6, but Yoel Armia will move up to the third line. Jim Hiller praised him the other day and talked about feeling like he ought to get him more ice time. That will come at the expense of Warren Foegele, I suppose. Warren Foegele will move down to that line with Sammy Helenius, who will check in for Alex Turcotte and Corey Perry. At the start of that availability with Jim Hiller, you could hear him talk about what that fourth line might look like. Foegele brings speed. He talked about Sammy Helenius being a little bit more physical. I think the word he used was smash mouth, talking about what that fourth line might look like. So based on practice alone today, and it was just one practice, and it was less than 45 minutes, so you know, that's all we've seen so far in between Boston and Ottawa, but that's what it looked like today. The defensive pairs looked to be the same: Anderson and Edmondson, Dumoulin and Clark, and Muvarari and Ceci. Unclear who will get the start in net. It is the Ottawa Senators, and so, not only did Forsberg play very well in his game with them last time, but it is also his former team. Darcy Kemper, I thought, played well against Boston. That goal in overtime that Boston scored, perhaps he would like to have back. But generally speaking, if you only allow 2 goals and one of them's in overtime, and the team in front of you only scores 1 goal and doesn't get anything done on the power play, I don't know that that's reason to take him out. Forsberg had the 1-0 shutout against his former team, the Ottawa Senators, on the 15th. So might be a little bit early to go back to the backup, but there are reasons, I suppose, to do that. So that's what we saw from practice today. If anybody has any questions or comments, or if you'd like to weigh in, you can go ahead and leave a comment on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. It was a short practice, longer than, like, it wasn't just that, oh, they're out there and then before you blink they're gone. They were definitely out there, they were definitely working on things, but they didn't take a full hour. I was there to record something earlier, so I came out from the studio at about 10:45 ish. The team was already on the ice. They were working on stuff. Practice hadn't officially started, but guys were trickling onto the ice before the 11 o'clock start time. Once 11 o'clock hit, then practice started. And, there was more structure, obviously, as everybody was out there. The coaches were out there. The practice actually started. But by 11:45, they were pretty well done. Then we were allowed in the players area. We got to talk to Jim Hiller and Kevin Fiala and Andrei Kuzmenko. And, Andrei Kuzmenko was asked about the conversations that he had with Jim Hiller when he was taken out of the lineup. And he said he understands what Jim Hiller wants. Jim Hiller understands what he wants. Wouldn't go into details. I don't blame him. Wouldn't expect it, but seemed to think it was a fairly positive conversation. But he and Kevin Fiala both acknowledged what everybody at this point acknowledges. There's no mystery to it, which is that the power play simply has to improve. It cannot continue to be as bad as it has been. I was talking to John Kelly and Jim Fox this morning for a recording. You will see that later this week. But one of the things that I mentioned on that recording, and I will mention it here now, is that the Kings power play, not only is it, I believe it's worst in the league. If it's not worst, it's second worst. It's actually, I guess, only fourth worst at 14.3%. But the net power play, which is the power play with shorthanded goals scored against, is 8.6. And that is worst in the league. The net power play for the LA Kings is 32 out of 32 teams. And that's not good enough. And everybody knows it's not good enough. And there's no longer any way to sort of sugarcoat it or to say, well, at least this or at least that. No, it's hurting the team. Boston's best chances came while the Kings were on the power play. And teams with aggressive penalty kills and with talent on their penalty kill units, it seems like they know what to do against the Kings' top power play unit. They know to pressure, they know to jump out and look for offense. Whereas if you get a team with a slightly less talented penalty kill unit or a less aggressive penalty kill unit, those might be the games where the Kings look good. Power plays are funny because, yes, John, you are correct. It is odd that the Kings are the best 6-on-5 team in the league, but tough 5-on-4. Part of that, I think, is just that opponents know, there's a certain sort of predictability baked into the Kings 5-forward power play at this point. And I think that's what we saw in practice, was an attempt to mix up that predictability, to get the players moving, to get players at different spots on the ice, to get the puck moving faster and to get the feet moving more. Because what has sort of developed is that the puck doesn't move quickly and the feet don't move that much. And so it becomes very predictable, even though it's somewhat unconventional that it's 5 forwards and, oh, how crazy is that? But if they're not moving very much and the puck is stopping at each spot on the 5-man unit, if it's not being whipped around and you're not catching the goalie moving laterally and you're not getting defenders out of position, if you're kind of telegraphing your plays, it's really easy to defend them. And, for all of the talk of how successful it was at the end of last season, well, A, that was last season. B, that was a 32 game run plus 6 games in the playoffs. So that's 38. plus the 22 games that have been played so far this season. So we're now looking at almost 60 games worth of experience that other teams' scouts and coaches have to prepare for it. And one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite sports media personalities, Tony Kornheiser, is the other team has coaches too. And so it's very fine and good to come up with a wrinkle, but as soon as the other team counters your wrinkle, you need to have a second wrinkle, or you need to have been paying attention to what they're doing to counter their counter. I mean, that's how strategy evolves. It's a give and take. It's a never ending battle of adjustments. And that's what hopefully we saw during practice today. And we will see it out on the ice in the games moving forward, because if the Kings expect to make the playoffs, and, everybody loves, Jim Hiller gave it a little bit of lip service there, talking about how much parity there is in the league and how tight the standings are and how it's because everybody checks and the defenses are tighter. And okay, that's fine. But if you want to win, you need to be better at everybody else than what they're doing. And as of this moment, which is 1:00 on Sunday afternoon, the 23rd of November, the Kings are 1 point out of not being in a playoff spot. They're currently in a wild card spot, and they're only 3 points out of first place. So that is the double-edged sword of parity. You can be just as close to the top as you are to the bottom. And, you can view that as glass half full, glass half empty, and I'm not going to tell you how to view the world. But moving forward, the Kings excel at what they want to do. They want to play defense. They want to penalty kill. That is their organizational focus. That's their identity. That's what they focus on. They do it incredibly well. But it cannot come at the expense of the things they don't want to do. Or the things that they don't excel at. Your offense doesn't have to be the tops in the league if your defense is the tops in the league, but it can't be the worst in the league. Your offense does have to provide scoring occasionally. And, it's tough to look at a full 22 game sample when the Kings stumbled out of the gate the way they did, but just looking at the full 22 games, the Kings have the 5th worst offense and the 5th best defense. But if you adjust that for dates on the calendar, so if you jump that up to, I'm just going to make it October 17th, I think it is. Yeah, if you start October 17th, which is the last 17 games the Kings have played, they're 9-3-5, 676 point percentage, number 1 defense in the league, goals against of 2.35, but 2.71, tied for 5th worst in offense, and their net power play drops from 8 point whatever to 7.3. So they've figured out the penalty killing. They've got the defense. Their points percentage is good in that 19 game stretch. Like, I'm not trying to paint this as a doom and gloom scenario, but power play's got to improve. They've got to score more goals. I don't want to step too much on the recording I did this morning with John and Jim, because there'll be a full episode of that later where we get into power plays and situations like that. But stuff needs to get fixed, and you want a diverse team that can, right, the 2012 Kings or the 2023 Panthers or any of these teams that get compared to that Kings team, the line is, well, they can beat you any way you want. They can beat you their way, they can beat you your way. They can beat you on offense, they can beat you on defense, they can beat you on special teams. Right now the Kings can beat you one way, and that's on defense. And that's fine. And it will, that's perfectly acceptable in an 82 game season when you've got different opponents coming in every night and they're prepared for a road trip and they're on their own thing. They're trying to work out their own details and figure out their own answers and questions and figure out what they're good at and what they're bad at. But the problem is 82 games later, you have a playoff series where you're going up against the same opponent 7 games in a row. And if you've only got one trick and the other team figures it out, or your trick just isn't good enough. Last year, right, the Kings got a 2-0 lead on Edmonton and had a lead in game 3 and a lead in game 4. And if I'm not mistaken, a lead in game 5. But they lost because they couldn't counter. Well, they lost for a number of different reasons. I don't want to make it overly simple or say the wrong thing, but the point is this team can absolutely beat you on one side of the ice, but they've got to figure out how to beat you on the middle and the offensive side of the ice. So that is going to wrap it up for this practice report. Hope you enjoyed listening to Jim Hiller and my thoughts on it. And we will see you tomorrow after the Ottawa Senators game and potentially in the middle of the day after the morning skate. Have a good weekend.